The cold Christmas Eve snow fell quietly over the sleeping city. The streets were almost empty, except for a few cars passing by and the glow of Christmas lights hanging from houses. Bright reds, greens, and golden lights blinked against the dark night sky, but the air was bitter cold, cutting against the skin like tiny needles. Clara sat behind the wheel of her black luxury car. She had just left a big Christmas party at a fancy hotel. There had been music, champagne, laughter, and people dressed in shining gowns. Everyone had been celebrating. Everyone had been smiling. Yet, as she drove away, Clara felt nothing inside her chest but an emptiness that no party could fill. She had money, more than she could ever spend. She had a huge house, so many clothes, and a name that everyone in the city respected. But what she did not have was warmth. Real warmth. As her car slowed at a red light, she looked out at the sidewalks. The snow had piled up against the corners, and the lamps painted the white ground in a soft yellow glow. That was when Clara noticed something strange, a small movement, something shivering near the alley beside a row of shops. At first, she thought it was a stray dog, but when she leaned closer and narrowed her eyes, her breath caught. It was not a dog. It was a child. Clara's hands froze on the wheel. She blinked twice to make sure she wasn't imagining it. Underneath the shadow of a trash bin, a tiny girl sat curled into herself, trying to stay warm with only a thin, torn blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Clara felt her chest tighten. She pulled her car over and quickly stepped out. The night air was freezing, and her heels sank into the snow. "Sweetheart," Clara whispered, walking closer, her voice soft but shaking with shock. "What are you doing here?" The little girl lifted her head slowly. She looked no older than 6. Her dark skin was pale from the cold, and her lips trembled as if every word was painful to speak. Her eyes, wide and frightened, held the kind of sadness no child should ever know. I don't have anywhere else to go," the girl whispered. Clara's heart cracked open. The girl's voice was so small, so fragile, that it nearly disappeared into the sound of the wind. Kneeling down, Clara noticed the details that broke her even more. The girl's shoes were torn at the toes, her socks wet from the snow, her fingers were red and raw. Holding tightly to that useless blanket, she looked hungry, she looked scared, she looked forgotten by the entire world. Clara swallowed hard, feeling tears sting her eyes. This was Christmas Eve. Families everywhere were gathering around fires. Children were unwrapping gifts. The smell of roasted dinners was filling warm homes. But here, in the freezing night, this little girl had been left to suffer alone beside the trash. The image was unbearable. Clara took a deep breath, trying to steady her emotions. She placed her hand gently on the girl's arm. The child flinched at first, but Clara spoke softly. "It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you. My name is Clara. What's yours?" The girl hesitated, her eyes flickering with both fear and a tiny hope. She lowered her voice, as if the world might punish her for speaking. "My name is Amara," she whispered. "Amara," Clara repeated, her voice breaking slightly. "That's a beautiful name." For a long moment, the two just looked at each other. Clara saw not just a child in the snow, but a soul crying out for love. And Amara saw not just a rich stranger in a long coat, but perhaps the first person in a long time who had looked at her with kindness. The snow kept falling, wrapping the city in silence. Clara's expensive coat could not stop her from shaking, not from the cold, but from the storm inside her heart. She had spent her life surrounded by wealth and luxury, but in that single moment, none of it mattered. What mattered was the small girl trembling before her. The girl with eyes full of both sorrow and secrets. Clara knew she could not drive away. She could not leave Amara here. Something deep inside told her this meeting was not by chance. It was destiny. "Come with me, Amara," Clara said softly, extending her hand. "You don't have to stay out here tonight." The girl looked at the hand, uncertain, her small chest rising and falling with quick breaths. Her body screamed for warmth, but her heart feared disappointment. The snowflakes danced between them like tiny stars. The city around them faded away. There was only Clara, with her trembling hand reaching out, and Amara, with her frightened eyes searching for trust. Slowly, hesitantly, Amara reached out her own cold fingers and placed them into Clara's hand. At that touch, Clara felt something she hadn't felt in years, something money had never given her, a spark of meaning, a reason to breathe. She held the little girl's hand tight and whispered, almost to herself, "You're safe now." And on that cold Christmas Eve, under the falling snow, A story began, one that would change both their lives forever. The silent drip of night grew colder as Clara led Amara toward her car. The little girl's steps were weak, her thin legs trembling in the snow. Clara bent down and wrapped her own thick scarf around Amara's neck, tucking it gently so the child could feel at least a little warmer. "Careful," Clara whispered as she opened the car door. Amara hesitated, her small eyes darting to the luxury leather seats as though they didn't belong to her world. The smell of warmth and perfume drifted from inside. "It's okay, sweetheart," Clara encouraged. "Get in." Slowly, Amara climbed inside, clutching her torn blanket like it was her only treasure. Clara shut the door softly and walked around to the driver's side. As she sat down, she could hear the faint sound of Amara's teeth chattering. She quickly turned the heater on high. The car filled with a soft hum, and warm air began to spread. Amara's tiny hands stretched toward the vents as if they were rays of sunlight. For a moment, Clara simply watched her, her heart aching at how easily this child found comfort in something so basic: warmth, something Clara herself had always taken for granted. The car began to move slowly down the quiet streets. Christmas lights blinked past the windows. But inside the vehicle, silence hung thick. Clara's hands gripped the steering wheel, but her thoughts were tangled. Who was this girl? How long had she been alone? Why was she out there in the snow? The mansion of lights black car rolled slowly through the gates of Clara's estate. Tall iron bars slid open and golden lights lit up the long driveway. Snowflakes sparkled under the lamps, and the grand mansion stood at the end, glowing like a palace against the winter night. Inside the car, Amara pressed her small face against the window. Her eyes widened at the sight of the house, larger than any place she had ever seen. Twinkling lights lined the roof, a giant Christmas tree glittered in the front garden, and the windows shone with warm thought. Clara noticed her look and whispered, "This is my home." Amara turned her head slowly. She did not speak, but her eyes seemed to ask the question, "Is this where I belong?" The car stopped. Clara stepped out first, her heels crunching in the snow, then opened the door for Amara. The little girl clutched her blanket tighter as she followed, her thin shoes sinking into the white ground. The mansion loomed above her, so tall and perfect that it almost frightened her. When they stepped inside, warmth rushed over them. A fire burned gently in the living room hearth. Pine garlands wrapped around the staircase. The smell of cinnamon and vanilla filled the air. Yet despite the decorations, the house felt quiet to quiet. Amara stood still on the marble floor, afraid to move. The chandeliers above glittered like frozen stars. She looked down at her worn shoes, leaving wet marks on the polished tiles. She whispered, almost ashamed, "I'll make your house dirty." Clara's heart broke again. Kneeling down, she gently lifted Amara's chin. "You are not dirty, sweetheart. You are a gift." Those words seemed to confuse the girl. As if no one had ever spoken them to her, Clara led her to the couch near the fire. She took off her coat, wrapped it around Amara, and placed a soft pillow behind her back. The little girl sat stiffly at first, afraid to relax on something so fine. Slowly, she sank into the cushion, her eyelids heavy with exhaustion. "Would you like some hot chocolate?" Clara asked. Amara nodded shyly. Clara hurried into the kitchen. The sound of pots and cups echoed in the empty space as she stirred the warm milk and cocoa. Clara thought about how strange it was. Her home was always full of things: expensive furniture, rare paintings, golden cutlery, but it had always been empty of meaning. And now, with a single child sitting on her couch, it felt alive. When she returned, Clara placed the steaming cup in Amara's small hands. The girl lifted it slowly, blowing gently. Before taking her first sip, her eyes lit up, and she whispered, "It's sweet." Clara smiled. "Sweet, just like you." For a while, the only sound was the crackle of the fire. Amara drank carefully, holding the cup with both hands. Clara sat beside her, watching her every movement, feeling a strange warmth fill her own chest. Finally, Clara spoke softly, "Amara, do you have any family? Someone I can call for you?" The question hung heavy in the air. Amara's small shoulders stiffened. She placed the cup down slowly on the table, her lips pressed tightly together, and her eyes filled with a shadow that seemed far too old for her young face. Clara reached out gently, resting her hand on the girl's trembling fingers. "It's okay," she whispered. "You don't have to tell me tonight. You are safe here. No one will hurt you." Amara looked at her, and for the first time, tears spilled down her cheeks. They rolled silently, leaving shining trails on her skin. She quickly wiped them away with the corner of her blanket, but Clara pulled her close. Holding her in her arms, the little girl's body shook with quiet sobs. Clara stroked her hair, whispering again and again, "You're safe now. You're safe." Outside, snow kept falling. The world was silent, but inside the mansion, a miracle was beginning. Later that night, Clara led Amara upstairs. The grand halls, lined with portraits and gold-framed mirrors, seemed overwhelming to the small girl. Clara opened the door to a guest bedroom, where soft sheets and a plush bed awaited. "This is yours for tonight," Clara said gently. Amara's eyes widened again. She touched the bedspread as if it were made of clouds. "For me?" she asked. "Yes, for you," Clara said, her voice breaking with emotion. Amara climbed onto the bed, sinking into the warmth. Her little body seemed swallowed by the soft blankets. Clara tucked her in, just as she imagined a mother would. "Sleep well, sweetheart," Clara whispered, kissing her forehead without even thinking. Amara's tired eyes blinked as she whispered, "Thank you." Then, for the first time in who knew how long, she fell asleep with peace on her face. Clara stood by the door, watching her breathe, her chest rising and falling softly. Tears blurred her own vision, but her heart felt full in a way it hadn't. For years in that quiet moment, Clara made a silent promise to herself. She would not let this child go back to the cold. She would not let her fade into the shadows again. This Christmas Eve had brought her something no money could ever buy: love, raw and pure. And though she didn't know it yet, Amara carried a secret that would shake Clara's world and leave everyone in tears. The morning after sun rose slowly over the snowy city, its golden rays spilling across the windows of Clara's mansion. The night storm had softened, leaving the world wrapped in a blanket of white. Inside, the warmth of the fireplace still lingered, and the faint smell of cinnamon drifted through the air. Clara awoke earlier than usual. For years, her mornings had been empty silence echoing in her big home, the sound of her heels on the cold floor the only life. But today, she felt something different. She remembered the little girl sleeping upstairs. Quickly, Clara slipped on her robe and went to the guest bedroom. She opened the door quietly, her heart holding both fear and hope. There, under the soft blankets, Amara slept, her small body curled up like a kitten, her cheeks no longer blue from the cold, but pink with warmth. The rise and fall of her chest was steady, peaceful. Clara stood in the doorway for a long time, simply watching. She had never seen something so fragile yet so powerful. This child abandoned, forgotten, was now bringing life into her house. When Amara stirred, her big eyes blinked open. She looked around, confusion flickering on her face, as though she thought the night had been a dream. "Good morning, sweetheart," Clara said softly. Amara rubbed her eyes, sitting up slowly. She clutched the blanket tightly, her voice small. "Is this still your house?" "Yes." Clara smiled gently, walking closer. "You're still safe here." For a moment, Amara simply stared. Then, a faint smile touched her lips, a smile so delicate it seemed like a treasure. Clara's heart swelled. She wanted that smile to stay forever. Downstairs, Clara prepared breakfast herself. Normally, her maid handled such things, but today Clara wanted to cook. She cracked eggs, buttered toast, and poured warm milk into cups. She even set a plate of strawberries, thinking the child might like something sweet. When Amara came down, her small steps hesitant on the marble stairs, she paused at the side of the table. "All of this is for me?" she asked softly. Clara nodded, pulling out a chair. "Yes. You need food, little one. You need strength." Amara sat slowly, staring at the plates as if they were magic. She picked up a strawberry, turning it in her fingers before taking a tiny bite. The taste lit her eyes, and she whispered, "It's so good." Clara's throat tightened. "Eat as much as you like, darling. There's plenty." For the first time, Clara saw her eat not as a starving child grabbing scraps, but as someone beginning to trust. Each bite was slow, careful, almost reverent. After breakfast, Clara led Amara to the living room. The giant Christmas tree stood tall, its ornaments sparkling. Beneath it were neatly wrapped presents, but they had always felt meaningless to Clara. Gifts bought for show, not love. Amara walked closer, her eyes wide with wonder. She touched the glass ornaments gently, as if afraid to break them. "Do you like it?" Clara asked. Amara nodded, whispering, "It looks like stars came down to stay." Clara smiled. "Would you like to open a gift?" Amara froze. "For me?" "Yes, for you." Clara bent down, picking a small box wrapped in red paper. She placed it in Amara's hands. Go on." The girl's fingers trembled as she unwrapped it. Inside was a soft woolen scarf, white with golden threads. She lifted it carefully, pressing it against her cheek. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Clara tied it gently round her neck. "Now you'll always be warm." Tears filled Amara's eyes. She threw her small arms around Clara, hugging her tightly. Clara closed her eyes, holding her close, her heart breaking and healing at the same time. The day passed gently. Clara showed Amara the garden, where the snow glittered like diamonds. They built a tiny snowman together, their laughter echoing across the empty yard. Inside, they baked cookies, Amara's face dusted with flour as she giggled for the first time. Every moment, Clara felt something she hadn't in years: joy. Not the shallow joy of parties or money, but the deep, tender joy of giving love and receiving it back. But as the evening grew quiet, Clara noticed something in Amara's eyes. Behind her smiles and shy laughter, there was a shadow, something hidden, something heavy. When Clara tucked her into bed that night, she sat on the edge of the mattress. "Amara, you don't have to tell me now, but one day, will you share your story with me?" Amara's eyes glistened in the dim light. Her voice was a whisper, trembling like the flame of a candle. "There are things about me," she said softly, "that people don't like. That's why they left me." Clara's chest tightened. She stroked Amara's hair gently. "Sweetheart, whatever your secret is, it doesn't change this. You are precious. You deserve love. Nothing will make me stop caring." Amara turned her face into the pillow, silent tears slipping down her cheeks. Clara stayed with her until sleep finally took her. When she left the room, Clara stood in the hallway, her heart heavy. She knew the child was carrying a secret, something deep enough to make her believe she wasn't wanted. Clara whispered to herself in the empty hall, "Whatever it is, I'll protect her." The snow outside fell softly again, but this time, Clara did not feel the cold. She felt the weight of destiny, and deep down, she knew Amara's secret would not just touch her life, it would shake it to its very core. The question of belonging days after Christmas Eve unfolded like a dream. Inside Clara's mansion, each morning, Amara woke up in a warm bed, her tiny body wrapped in soft blankets instead of cold shadows. Each night, Clara tucked her in with a kiss on the forehead, the way she imagined a mother should. But beneath the laughter, the cocoa, and the shining lights, Clara noticed something. Amara never stopped glancing at the door. Every sound from outside made her flinch. Every question about her past drew silence. On the third morning, Clara prepared pancakes drizzled with honey. She placed the plate in front of Amara and said gently, "Sweetheart, you know you don't have to hide from me. You can tell me anything." Amara pecked at her pancake with her fork. Her big eyes lifted, heavy with worry. What if you don't want me anymore? If I tell you?" Clara's throat tightened. She leaned across the table, touching the child's hand. "Amara, nothing you say will make me stop caring for you. You hear me? Nothing." Amara's lips parted as if she wanted to answer, but then she shook her head quickly, pressing the words back inside. She whispered instead, "I like it here, but I don't belong." "You belong," Clara said firmly. "You belong right here with me." The little girl looked down again, her eyes filling with tears she refused to let fall. That afternoon, Clara took Amara shopping. Snow glittered on the sidewalks, and shop windows glowed with red ribbons and golden bells. Clara guided her into a children's boutique where rows of warm coats, boots, and dresses filled the shelves. "Choose anything you like," Clara said. Amara froze, staring at the endless options. Her fingers touched the sleeves lightly, as though she were afraid she might be scolded for wanting something. Finally, she whispered, "I don't know how." Clara's heart ached. She knelt down, smiling gently. "Then I'll help. We'll choose together." They left the shop with bags of clothes, Amara holding a small teddy bear in her arms, the first gift she had chosen by herself. As they walked back to the car, Clara thought, "This child has been given nothing her whole life. Not love, not safety, not even the freedom to want something, but I will give her everything." Back at the mansion, Clara lit the fireplace again. The glow bathed the room in warmth, and Amara curled on the couch with her teddy. Clara sat nearby, reading aloud from a storybook, her voice soft and steady. But in the middle of the story, Amara interrupted. "Clara," she whispered. "Yes, darling." Amara hesitated, clutching the bear tighter. Why are you being so kind to me?" Clara put the book down, her eyes gentle. "Because you deserve kindness, Amara. You deserve love, safety, happiness." No child should be left in the cold. Amara's eyes glistened. But what if I'm different? Clara leaned forward. Different is beautiful. Different is strong. I don't care what anyone says about you. To me, you're perfect. Amara pressed her face into the teddy, hiding her tears. She did not say more, but Clara felt the walls around her heart cracking bit by bit. The secret was close, she could feel it. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She walked through her silent house, past the glittering tree and the quiet hallways. For years, she had been surrounded by riches but starved of meaning. Now, meaning was sleeping upstairs in a little bed, holding a teddy bear. Clara whispered to herself, I can't lose her. Whatever her secret is, I'll stand beside her. The next morning, Amara sat quietly at the breakfast table. She pushed her food around without eating much. Clara studied her carefully. Amara, Clara said softly, you seem sad today. The child's eyes lifted, full of storm clouds. Her voice shook as she asked, Clara, if you found out something about me, something people think is bad, would you send me away? Clara's chest clenched. She stood and walked around the table, kneeling beside Amara's chair. She cupped the girl's face in her hands. Listen to me, she whispered. You are not bad. Nothing about you could ever make me turn away. I will never send you back to the cold. Never. Amara's lip trembled. She opened her mouth to speak, but tears spilled down her cheeks instead. Clara pulled her into her arms, holding her as she cried. Between sobs, the child whispered words that made Clara's heart pound. There's something about me. That's the reason people left me. The reason nobody wants me. If I tell you, you'll cry too. Clara stroked her back. Then I'll cry with you, but I'll never leave you. The fire crackled softly. Snow fell outside in heavy flakes. The mansion felt like the center of the world. Holding its breath, Amara pulled back slightly, her wet eyes staring into Clara's. Do you promise? She asked. Clara nodded, her own eyes shining. I promise with all my heart. For a long moment, silence wrapped around them, heavy and fragile. Amara's small hands trembled as she gripped Clara's sleeves. She took a deep breath, her voice breaking. Clara, my secret is. But then she stopped, choking on the words. She buried her face again in Clara's chest, too afraid to finish. Clara closed her eyes, holding her tighter than ever. Whatever the secret was, she knew it was coming soon. And when it came, it would not only explain the girl's pain, it would change Clara's life forever. The question of belonging still hovered in the air, and the answer, Clara knew, would arrive with tears. The secret unveiled mansion was quiet that night. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving the world wrapped in a silver blanket of snow. Inside, the Christmas tree still glowed softly, its ornaments twinkling like watchful eyes in the darkness. Clara sat in the living room with a cup of tea in her hands, but she wasn't drinking. Her thoughts were tangled, circling back to the same question. What secret is this child hiding? She looked toward the stairs. Amara had gone to bed early, her face pale with something heavier than tiredness. Clara couldn't forget her words. If I tell you, you'll cry too. The thought broke her heart. What kind of pain could a child carry that would make her believe she was unlovable? Clara set down her cup and stood. Slowly, she climbed the stairs, her footsteps soft on the carpet. She paused outside the guest room door, listening. There was no sound. She knocked gently before pushing the door open. Amara sat upright in bed, wide awake, clutching her teddy bear tightly against her chest. Her eyes were shiny in the dim light, as if she had been crying quietly. Sweetheart, Clara whispered, walking in, you're still awake. Amara nodded, her small lips pressed together. Her fingers twisted the teddy's ear nervously. Clara sat down beside her on the bed. Do you want to talk to me? For a long moment, silence filled the room. Then Amara whispered, Clara, you said you would never leave me, even if you knew. Clara reached for her hand. Yes, darling, I promised. Amara's eyes lifted, full of fear. Do you really mean it? With all my heart. Clara said firmly. Amara trembled. Slowly, she slid the teddy aside and pulled down the collar of her nightshirt. There, on her shoulder, was a faded scar, long, thin, and cruel. Clara gasped softly. Her hand rose to her lips. Amara. The girl's voice broke as she explained. People hurt me. They said I was a curse. They said I wasn't like the other children. They left me because I was different. Clara's chest burned. Who told you that? My family, Amara whispered, tears spilling freely now. They said I brought them bad luck, that I was the reason. They were poor. That's why. They put me out. They told me I didn't deserve a home. Clara's eyes filled with tears. She pulled Amara into her arms, holding her trembling body close. No, 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 sweetheart, that is not true. You are not a curse. You are a blessing. Amara sobbed into her chest. Then why did they leave me? Why does nobody want me? Clara rocked her gently, her own tears falling into Amara's hair. Because sometimes people are blinded by their pain, and they say cruel things that are not true. But their words don't define you. You are precious, Amara. You are wanted. You are loved. Amara pulled back, her face wet, her small hands gripping Clara's sleeves desperately. But what if you get tired of me too? What if you change your mind? Clara's heart shattered at the fear in her voice. She cupped the girl's cheeks, looking straight into her eyes. Amara, look at me, she said firmly. I will never get tired of you. I will never send you away. From the moment I found you in the snow, you became part of my heart, and nothing can change that. The child blinked, stunned, as if no one had ever spoken such words to her before. Then, slowly, her sobs quieted. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against Clara's chest, as if finally believing. Clara held her tightly, whispering again and again, "You are mine now. You are safe. You are loved." The room was filled with silence, except for the sound of the fire downstairs crackling faintly and the soft breaths of a child. Finally letting go of her fear, Amara whispered one last confession. "Sometimes, when I was alone, I thought about sleeping forever, because it hurt too much to wake up cold and hungry. But then, you found me." Clara closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. She kissed the top of Amara's head, her voice trembling. "You will never be alone again. You hear me? Never." Amara nodded weakly, her tiny hands clutching Clara's robe as if it were her lifeline. And in truth, it was. That night, Clara stayed by Amara's bed until the child drifted into sleep. She stroked her hair gently, her tears drying slowly. Looking at her peaceful face, Clara thought, how could anyone throw away something so beautiful? How could they not see the miracle she is? Clara whispered into the quiet room, making a vow not just to Amara, but to herself. "I will be the mother you never had. I will give you back every piece of love the world stole from you, and I will protect you, no matter what it takes." Outside, snow continued to fall softly, covering the world in purity. Inside, under the watchful glow of Christmas lights, a broken child had finally spoken her truth, and a lonely woman had found her purpose. The secret had been revealed, not a curse, not a shame, but a story of pain waiting to be healed. And in that healing, both Clara and Amara would discover that sometimes the family you are born into is not the family you are meant to have.